There is an emotional cost to being a cycle breaker. If you make that conscious decision that I'm going to be the one who changes, I'm going to be the one who stops these habits, these toxic ways, they will not continue past me. There is a lot of grief around that. And I see this with therapy clients all the time, the grief over the lack of ideal, or grieving the fact that you may never feel emotionally safe around certain people in your family. You can experience an identity shift or an identity loss when doing this work. I have had clients say things along the lines of, if I'm not who they raised me to be, then who am I now? I encourage clients to be cycle breakers because it is so empowering. You do have that power to redefine your identity. Maybe before your values weren't based on healthy values, but now they get to be based on healthy values. That was some of the most profound healing I have ever experienced.
Welcome to Next Level You podcast. I'm Stephanie Dingbaum, your host, your biggest cheerleader, and your go-to girlfriend for real, raw, and uplifting conversations about leveling up in life. As a mental health therapist with over a decade of experience and a business coach helping women elevate their lives and businesses, I'm here to guide you through the mindset shifts, holistic practices, and manifestation tools you need to step into your most authentic, next level self. Whether you're here to ignite your personal growth, elevate your professional game, or simply rediscover you, this podcast is your invitation to dream bigger, go after your goals, and unapologetically claim the life you deserve. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. It's time to up-level, manifest, and glow.
Welcome back to Next Level You podcast, you guys. Today I am here recording part 2, talking all about intergenerational trauma, being the cycle breaker. I got such great feedback on that episode the week that it aired that I decided there needed to be a part 2 to this because there really is so much more that I could say. So here we are today. I want to say that I know this is a really heavy topic. I know this can be very triggering for some people. I completely understand that as somebody who has gone through the heavy healing journey with all of this. But I'm here to tell you that when we are talking about subjects like this, though I know it can be heavy, those are times when you really need to lean on your supports, both personally and professionally. While I know this can be triggering for some, if you know that you're not ready to dive into this subject, then give yourself permission to just not listen. I don't want you to listen to something that you feel like maybe you're not ready to hear or that might be upsetting to you. I don't find it as triggering anymore because, like I said, I've done a lot of the healing work around this, but I understand that everybody is in a different place when it comes to their healing journey. So I'm giving you permission to log off, to stop listening if you just feel like this is not for you. There's nothing wrong with that. So on part 1, I really just gave you a general overview of what intergenerational trauma is, what it means to be a cycle breaker. Today, I want to go even deeper on this topic. After recording that, I just kept getting these downloads about my specific journey and the specific wounds I have been working on healing. And I just felt the pull, like I'm pretty open and honest with you guys on here. And that's something I feel like I can be honest with you about. And it really might help you in your own journey. It might help with your self-awareness. It might help with you deciding to pull the trigger and become a cycle breaker in your own family line. So I also just really recognized that there was so much more that I could say. And I felt like as I was recording my last episode, I felt like I kept cutting myself off and stopping myself from going too deep into it. And so today's episode is really, I'm giving myself full permission to go as deep as I want to with this topic. So with that being said, just know as we go deep on this, that could trigger some emotions. It could trigger some grief. I absolutely recognize that everybody's in a different place with this journey. I myself went through an identity shift when I first started doing this work. So I'll be the first to say, while doing the work feels heavy at times, it's also the best thing I did for myself. And I hope if you don't feel that now, I hope at some point you do feel that way. Okay. I first just want to start off by saying that there is an emotional cost to being a cycle breaker. If you make that conscious decision that I'm going to be the one who changes, I'm going to be the one who stops these habits, these toxic ways, they will not continue past me. There is a lot of grief around that. And so I really want to acknowledge the grief that I've experienced, but also the grief that you yourself might experience if you decide to be the cycle breaker. First and foremost, I want to say, especially as I've done a lot of this work with my therapy clients, I've recognized that there is a lot of grieving over the childhood that you didn't get. This isn't us shaming your parents. This isn't us bad-mouthing your parents. I don't feel it's fair to do that because at the end of the day, they did the best they could with what they had, just like we are doing the best we can with what tools and knowledge and maturity that we have. So I don't feel it's fair to shame them or to put them down when you're doing this work. I think it's really important to just simply acknowledge that they are just human, just like you and I are, with flaws and just like we have. So understand that as children, we do often put parents up on a pedestal, but now that you're an adult making this decision, take them down from that pedestal and understand that they are human just like you do, or just like you are. They make mistakes just like you make mistakes. They did the best they could with what they had, just like you're doing the best you can with what you have. But they're not better than us, and we are not better than them. We are equals. But there's something to be said about grieving the childhood that you didn't get. When I first started this work, I recognized that while I didn't have any, I call it big T trauma, I didn't have any physical or sexual abuse in my childhood, but I did witness a lot of emotional abuse. I don't feel I got loved in the way I needed it. And so with that, there was just some grief that I experienced, like grieving the childhood I didn't get that I so badly wished I had. And I see this with therapy clients all the time. The grief over the lack of ideal. And that's a real thing. And that's a heavy topic to explore, but it's important to acknowledge that. There's also grief in terms of grieving the family connection that you may never have. Grieving the fact that you may never feel emotionally safe around certain people in your family. That's a hard pill to swallow as well. I am just naturally, I like to dive deep on topics. And when I don't feel I get that from family members, it does trigger that grief. And I crave that depth. I crave those deep connections. And it is disheartening when you can't get that from a relative or a family member. And so there's naturally just grief with that as well. And then there's grieving the closeness that gets lost when you do become a cycle breaker. That doesn't happen all the time, mind you. I just want to acknowledge that it can happen. When we decide to put boundaries in place with family members, especially if it's been a norm for generations to not put boundaries in place, and then you decide as a cycle breaker, that stops with me, I will practice healthy boundaries. Connections can be lost. People who don't understand our boundaries or people who benefited from our lack of boundaries can easily get triggered. And that can impact the closeness we have with people. And if it does impact that closeness, there can be grief connected to the loss of that bond that was once there. But to reframe this a little bit, I do want to point out that that bond could not have been that healthy to begin with if they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries before. I just really push back on that. Like, how great really was that bond then, right? And now moving forward, if they can forgive and understand where you're coming from, that bond has the opportunity to be stronger, potentially. Again, everybody's different though, so I can't guarantee that's how it's going to be for everybody. In regards to the emotional cost of being the cycle breaker, I also want to acknowledge that there were times for me where I felt like the outsider in my own family. And that is a really difficult emotion to cope with. In the beginning, when I thought I was the only one doing this work, before I realized my cousin was also doing this work, I felt isolated. I felt alone. I felt like nobody really understood why I was digging into this or what this could really do for me in my healing journey. And it sucks feeling like the outsider. It sucks feeling like you're misunderstood constantly. And there's wounds with that too, of constantly being misunderstood. And then the other emotional cost, I would say, is just like I just mentioned, the pain of being misunderstood. Even when you're doing something loving by healing, there's still pain that can be involved, especially when we are in the minority in our family and the majority of the people want to continue those toxic patterns. It can be very triggering and frustrating. So I want to point out that those are all normal emotions. But again, like those are times when you really need to lean on your positive supports, whether it's personal supports, friends outside of the family, or professional supports like a counselor. That's really important. You can experience an identity shift or an identity loss when doing this work. I have had clients say things along the lines of, if I'm not who they raised me to be, then who am I now? I thought I was X, Y, and Z, but now that I'm a cycle breaker, I don't want that to be my identity. But then who am I if that's not my identity, right? If you take so much pride in being in that family, but yet that family tends to pass on these really toxic ways, and you decide that's not going to be how I am, there can be an identity shift or loss. And there's grief with that as well, like I mentioned before. But what I want to point out is there is a lot of power behind getting to redefine your identity. I ran with the identity of being a cycle breaker in the beginning, and I felt very empowered being able to say that. And I've carried that into my practice and why I encourage clients to be cycle breakers, because it is so empowering. So you do have that power to redefine your identity. You also have the power to redefine your core values and other things too, like your definition of success. So even though there might be a loss of identity, you get to redefine that. You get to rebuild those things. Maybe before your values weren't based on healthy values, but now they get to be based on healthy values. And what do you want those values to be? Those values that you decide for yourself get to be carried on to that next generation for your children and their children. That's a really beautiful, like we talked about in the first episode, that's a legacy you get to leave for those future generations. That's huge, you guys. So even though this can be heavy work, even though there can be a lot of grief and a lot of pain tied to it, there also gets to be a lot of empowerment in this work. And I cannot stress that enough. Okay. So I want to share with you guys what my work was related to in being a cycle breaker, specifically in my family. So through doing this work, it was very apparent to me that there was a lot of loss in our family. When I first created our family genogram and I was going through 3 generations, it was very apparent that there was a lot of loss, specifically for mothers in our family lineage. So I really dove headfirst into the mother wounds and the generational female trauma in my family. This is a very common wound that I find in families, but I want to talk specifically about my situation because I think you might be able to relate because, like I said, this is super common in a lot of families. When I really dove into this, I realized that there was a lot of loss that young mothers had in my family. Mothers losing children, like having miscarriages, having stillbirths. And this was a common, like we're talking multiple females in multiple generations, not like one here and there sprinkled throughout, but multiple for each generation. And in the beginning, when I was embarking on my own fertility journey, it was really important to me that I needed to bring healing to this. Like I didn't want this to continue to be a wound that I was carrying for starting my own family, obviously. Like I didn't want that to be something that was getting in my way. And so I really dug into the trauma around those losses, the beliefs that those women might have been carrying, the emotional coping strategies that they may have leaned on or not leaned on, and what was passed down through that maternal line. And then I got to rewrite that story. I specifically decided I'm not getting help from the Western medicine world. I made a shift about 1.5 years into my fertility journey that I was going to focus on holistic healing. I was going to focus on integrative health practices. I wasn't going to rely on Western medicine practices and medications because I don't believe they helped me in my specific journey. And while I do feel they have a place in our society, I do feel they serve a purpose. They just they didn't resonate with me. That's all I'm going to say. And that's okay. Like, my story can be different than yours, and that's okay. But I just recognized that I felt like that was definitely not helpful for previous generations. And I wanted that story to be different for my generation and for generations after me. Through digging into this work, I ended up scheduling some Reiki sessions with a local shamanic healer that I work with. And that was really eye-opening. Through a couple sessions with her, I realized that not only was this mother-daughter wound or this maternal wound prevalent in generations of my family, but it was also prevalent in past lives that I've had. And I specifically got to relive a loss from a past life where I had a baby and lost a baby. And that was some of the most profound healing I have ever experienced. And for me, bringing healing to not just my family lineage, but also past lives was life-changing. And I really do believe that's been just a monumental part of my healing journey, specifically for my fertility journey. I also recognized in my family lineage that there was a lot of generational beliefs around self-worth or lack of self-worth, around rest, around productivity. This is all too common. And again, I guarantee you're going to be able to relate to this because I see it all the time with therapy clients as well. But so many of us inherited these unconscious beliefs like you have to earn your worth, rest is lazy, success means struggle. And I really want to say that, and this honestly directly connects with the work I do with my coaching clients. I really blend this into my coaching business as well. But those beliefs stemmed from a previous generation. And while it's outdated for us now, it probably wasn't back then. You know, I always use the example of like my grandparents were children out of the Great Depression. And at that time, money was scarce. Money didn't grow on trees. You did have to work hard to make money. It wasn't as prevalent as it is today. And because you had to work hard to make money, rest was seen as being lazy. But that's not true today. Okay? And so I want you to recognize that if these stories resonate with you, that you have to earn your worth, that you don't deserve to rest, and if you do, you're considered lazy, that in order to be successful, you have to work really hard and struggle to make that happen. None of that is true. Those are extremely limiting beliefs. And I saw those beliefs in my family lineage. My grandpa owned his own farm, always had help on the farm. His kids grew up working on the farm. His children who then took over the farm had grandkids that also grew up working on the farm. And so like a lot of hard work ethic is in our family line. And that's great. I really think we have such great mindset around work ethic in our family, but some just to a detriment though. While I do believe working on a farm is different from owning your own business, but there's also a lot of similarities there. The hard thing about working on a farm is, you have to do chores diligently. You don't get the choice. Cattle need to be fed. Fields need to be plowed. You don't get that choice necessarily. It makes sense why there are some unhealthy beliefs around work ethic because a lot of my family did grow up on farms. For me and for my future family, those beliefs are just outdated, that you constantly have to hustle, you constantly have to work hard. That's not necessarily true. And so I did a lot of work on rewriting these beliefs, coming up with new beliefs that feel aligned and right for me and that I want my values to align with, and then really hammering those into my subconscious through daily affirmations, through daily gratitude, through subliminal work. That has been primarily how I have rewritten those beliefs for me. And now my children, luckily, will not have to carry those beliefs any longer, which is so great. Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to elevate your mindset and manifest your goals? If you're a female entrepreneur or someone who's been dreaming of starting your own business, I have something so exciting to share with you. I'm Stephanie Dingbaum, and I've just launched my 12-week coaching program, the Up-Level Method. It is designed to help you gain clarity, build confidence, and create the soul-aligned business and life that you've been dreaming of. So here's what you'll all get in the program. Weekly one-on-one coaching calls tailored specifically to meet your goals, Voxer access for real-time support and accountability throughout the week from me, customized tools like journal prompts, meditations, and follow-up emails to keep you aligned and on track throughout the week, plus guidance to overcome imposter syndrome, rewrite limiting beliefs, and shift into an abundance mindset. The Up-Level Method isn't just about checking off goals. It's about helping you step into your power as a CEO, make decisions that light you up, and build a business that feels truly authentic to who you are. And the best part? The current pricing is literally the lowest that it will ever be. If you're even slightly considering it, lock it in now, because this investment in your future self will pay off tenfold, I promise you. Payment plans are available, so don't let finances hold you back from stepping into your best self. This is your chance to stop second guessing and start showing up for your business and life with purpose and intention. If this feels aligned, DM or email me today to set up a free clarity call. Let's see if the Up-Level Method is the right fit for you. All the details are in the show notes. This is your time. Let's make 2025 the year you up-level everything. I think it's also important to note when you're doing this heavy work that you continue to honor your lineage even while choosing to do things differently. Very much take pride in our family lineage. I really for a long time have always really looked up to my grandpa for the legacy that he's left our family. And I feel that he really did things the right way and just withheld some really strong values that he instilled in his children. And while, yes, some things were not done in a healthy manner, I don't hold any of that against my relatives. I don't hold any of that against, our elders, so to speak, or our grandparents. They did not necessarily have the knowledge that many of us have today. Also, I firmly believe that as generations have gone on, that our emotional intelligence or our EQ has gotten better each generation that has been added. And so I firmly believe that the emotional intelligence for my generation is far beyond the emotional intelligence for our grandparents' generation. I mean, I feel that way because I see in my own family lineage that my generation is much more comfortable opening up and talking about things like mental health and traumas and things like that. Whereas my parents' generation seems to struggle with that a little bit more. And definitely the generation before that, my grandparents' generation, it was rare, I feel, for them to talk about those things. Some of that is because of generational habits of sweeping things under the rug, which is another form of generational trauma that also stops with me. When there are toxic and unhealthy behaviors, I do not agree with sweeping it under the rug. And while that is a pattern that I have noticed in my extended family, I refuse to let that continue with me. I'm going to bring things up. I'm going to address things. It might make you uncomfortable, but you'll be okay. And it's better that we bring things to the surface than just simply letting them fall to the wayside and never get acknowledged, therefore never truly get healed. But I just wanted to mention how you're not completely disregarding your family lineage when you do this work. You can still honor your lineage while also choosing differently for your future, for you and your future generations. And I know I mentioned this before, but there are so many tools out there to help with this work. I myself chose hypnotherapy initially, and that was really powerful for me. And then I did some Reiki sessions. I did a shamanic healing session, did some Akashic record reading sessions, connected with spirit guides, did some cord cutting sessions in those Reiki sessions. All of that has been a part of my healing journey, specifically in regards to generational trauma. And it has all been so helpful. And I understand some of that may be foreign to you. I understand some of that may make you uncomfortable. Just the thought of doing one of those sessions might make you uncomfortable. But I really encourage you to dig into that and ask yourself, why does that make me uncomfortable? Is it just because I'm not familiar with those concepts? A lot of the time we are triggered by things that are just not familiar to us. And it's okay. Just to acknowledge that you're not familiar with it. It doesn't need to make you uncomfortable necessarily, but maybe that just means you need to ask questions and learn more about something versus just letting that discomfort come in the way. I know I acknowledged this in part 1 when I was talking about being a cycle breaker, but I want to explain the why behind doing this work. For me, what keeps me going in doing this work is that I am giving my children and future grandchildren a better, more empowered future. I am also going to live a more empowered life from here on out because I'm making the conscious decision to bring a stop to some unhealthy and toxic patterns. That is such an empowering feeling. And I love that my kids get to benefit from this work. Anything that gives my children a better life, to me, is completely worth putting the time and effort into. If I know that I'm more likely to practice healthier boundaries, if I know that I'm going to give my kids a chance to be heard and be seen when I know there's people in my lineage who were not given that chance, then they are better off. And that's my why. That's why I choose to continue to do this work. Even when it gets lonely at times, I'm reminding myself that I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for future generations. And that is what keeps me going. So in those moments when you notice that you're feeling isolated and feeling alone, because this work does sometimes change those relationship dynamics, remind yourself of that why. What's your why? Is it for your kids? Is it for your grandkids? Is it because you feel you deserve better? Because all of those things are valid. And whatever your why is, that's what you need to tell yourself in those moments when you're feeling isolated and alone. And I really encourage you to have a vision in your head for what you want your future to look like and the future for other generations to look like. What I love about the feminine wound, when I made the conscious decision to dive into this work and I started to do a lot of work on the feminine wound, we all carry this feminine wound in our family to an extent. Almost all of us have lineage that can be tied to females not being allowed to speak their truth, females being harmed or shunned for speaking their truth. So to an extent, we all have that in our family lineage. When I did healing work on that, that's ultimately what led to me starting my podcast, realizing I have a voice and it deserves to be heard. And that is proof that this will not continue on past me, that future women born in this family will know that they have a voice, will feel comfortable using it. In fact, they'll feel empowered using it like I do. And that's a beautiful thing, that wound has been healed and will not be carried on for future generations. Again, that goes back to my why. That's what I want, not just for myself, but for generations after me. So really have that vision in mind for what you want for yourself, but also what you want for those future generations. That vision can really motivate you in those times where you're feeling isolated and alone. When doing this work, because it is such heavy work and because it can trigger your anxiety, it's really important to have some go-to coping skills to tend to your nervous system. So as you know, tools such as allowing yourself to rest, consistent therapy sessions, any kind of creative outlet, those are all going to be really important for calming and regulating your nervous system when you are doing this heavy work. Rest is just important anyways, and we don't give it to ourselves enough. therapy, obviously as a therapist, I'm going to advocate for this, but whether I'm a therapist or not, I will tell you that going through therapy when doing my own inner work around generational trauma is what helped move the needle forward in a huge way. I cannot stress that enough. My therapist and I dug deep into this stuff. Granted, she was a hypnotherapist, so it definitely was in my favor. But in general, having that outlet so that you aren't feeling isolated, so that you aren't carrying this alone is huge. Okay. And so really consider setting that up for yourself if you are going to embark on being a cycle breaker. That outlet is much needed. And just in general, as you're going through this, really continue to maintain that self-trust. Like really tune in to your intuition and remind yourself that you are worthy of this work and that you are deserving of peace and that there is nothing wrong with you for wanting to put boundaries in place, for wanting to stop these cycles or these tendencies, that you are allowed. In fact, you need to empower yourself to believe that you are allowed. Give yourself permission to do this heavy work because you're not always going to get it from other people. What I would really love if this topic resonated with any of you is I would love for you to connect with me and share your cycle breaking stories with me. You can do that by, if you are subscribed to my weekly newsletter, you can reply to that with your story. I would love that. Or if you follow me on Instagram, DM me. I would love to hear your cycle breaking stories because like I've said this so many times, there's just so much to this topic, being a cycle breaker and generational trauma. Everybody's been touched in a different way when it comes to this topic. I know from doing this work as a therapist with my therapy clients that no one situation is the same. There's no cookie cutter generational trauma, and knowing what it looks like in my own family, I just really know the power behind community when doing this work. It helps you feel less alone. So feel free to share those stories with me. I'd love to hear them. And I really just want to reinforce for you guys that regardless of whether you're doing this work or not, you are not broken. Okay? We're not broken. Yes, our families might carry some heavy trauma. Yes, our families might have some toxic traits or tendencies. That does not equate to us being broken. Okay? And you also get to be the breaker of cycles. And carrying that title is so empowering. And future generations will thank you for this work. Maybe not in this lifetime, but they will thank you for doing this work. I really just want to thank you guys for being open to hearing these hard truths, to walking this hard path. I know it's not easy. I know that the healing journey can just be very heavy at times, but this is a very sacred journey. And the benefits from doing this work far outweigh the negatives. So it makes it all completely worth it. If this is a topic that you are just digging into for the first time and you really want to go deeper on this in your own personal healing journey, I am including in the show notes a freebie. If you're interested, it is a PDF of some journal prompts that could help you dig deeper into this for your own family lineage. So if that interests you in any way, shape, or form, go into the show notes, download that. Feel free to use that however you want. And like I said before, I really encourage you to DM me or email me back if you are subscribed to my weekly newsletter. Email me back with what you are healing in your own lineage. And I would be more than happy to be a cheerleader for you and just empower you to know that you are doing the right thing and that you are not alone and that there's other cycle breakers out here doing the same thing, and just keep walking that walk. I'm proud of you guys for doing this work because I know how heavy it can be. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really hope you saw value in this topic. I really hope this was helpful for you in some way, shape, or form, I'm always just happy if it just helps one person, to be completely honest. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to talking to you guys all next week.
Real quick before you go, I just want to thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. And congratulations on showing up for you. Every step you take to invest in yourself brings you that much closer to your next level self, and I'm so proud of you. If you loved this episode, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration, or take a screenshot and tag me on socials so we can keep spreading the next level you energy. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Let's freaking go!